Hello and welcome to another cinematography lighting breakdown. Today we're going to be talking about Degas, the Collector of Prints. Now you can see the painting right here, and I think this is a really wonderful soft light portrait. I've actually already imported the painting into Draw.io, and I've already opened my lighting diagram template tools. Now, if you want to use these same tools for free, you can go over to my Patreon at patreon.com/TRENTONHOSHIKO. I have a link down in the description, and you can find the free template file for Draw.io. Draw.io is a free and open source diagram software. There's a link for that also down in the video's description. If you want to learn how to import the template and how to import a photo, you can find another video about that down in the video's description also. But we are already set up, so let's start talking about this painting. Now, the first thing that I want to point out is that it is really soft light. This is just absolutely so gorgeous to me. I love soft light, and you can really tell because there's not any incredibly hard shadows even on the face. Faces are just kind of naturally pretty angular, and that makes for usually hard shadows when you have hard light. Pretty much the hardest shadow we have is right here underneath the eye. We do have contrast between the left and the right side of the face, but that is not the same thing as a harder shadow. And if you look around the rest of the room, pretty much the only hard shadow we get is right here at the leg, and that's just because it's so close to the portfolio that's right here. Really, the shadows are very, very soft and kind of nullified by the diffusion of the light. Now, what kind of things can we notice? Well, the light is going from right to left. We do get more exposure on the left side of his face because the right side is further away from that source and is being kind of blocked, but we still get not only skin color detail, but also just detail in his eye right there. So that does mean that there is a lot of light kind of floating around in this environment. Now, nothing in this painting is also like exceedingly bright. This is probably one of the brightest things in the image, maybe his hand right here. His hand is probably the brightest thing in the image. It's a little bit brighter than his face, and just that kind of comes down to how the light is falling in this image. But really nothing is too bright. We do get some dark tones though. If you take a look at his jacket right here, it is pretty dark on the shadow side, but we are still getting detail. So we want to make sure that how we are lighting this preserves dark tones, but also detail while not going too bright. And something like a really soft source will help with that because it will make sure that we get enough light just bouncing around overall to get our exposure while also not creating really hard dramatic contrast. This is probably lit by a window with some curtains. That's kind of generally how this look I find is created, but those are the main details. In terms of composition, he is pretty much center frame, and also his head is on that kind of top third line. You can see it better if I zoom out. Yeah, so his head is around that top third line, his hand is around the bottom third line, and he is pretty much center in the frame itself. Now, something interesting composition-wise is having this big black mass right behind his head that is the corner of this frame be actually centered. If you're starting out, that is usually considered something not to do. But when you have a lot of experience, those kinds of composition, things like that, I think it adds something to the painting rather than subtracting when you kind of know how to use them as part of your composition. So I think that's really interesting. It kind of creates a really steady composition because of how strong that line is. We do see some things in the back here, and so we want to make sure we can get exposure all the way back here with the source that we have coming in. But once again, they're pretty diffused actually, even being further away from the source. That is a very soft source over here. He creates a bit of a shadow, and then the counter here creates a bit of a shadow back here, but once again that edge is just so feathered that I don't think that really there's any hard light at all being used in this image. But now that we've talked about it, let's talk about actually creating it. So just opening up the floor plan tools, we will build our room space. We're going to use the medium for this. He's pretty close to that wall. He is probably turned a little bit away from it like that. This perspective is a little funny because this painting on the wall does look pretty flat to the frame that we're viewing through, but the edge of this desk and the way this cabinet door is kind of implies that the camera is off to the side just a little bit. And so that would be something kind of more like this. And he's facing camera left, his back is camera right, and that wall is going behind him. Now, we do need a desk, so let's find something in Drawio's tools here. I think we're going to be using this one, which is just the table model. And then we're going to fill it as brown. And so in the camera, this desk should be creating an angle that goes from closer at camera right to further away at camera left. And we have him sitting there. I do want to have some sort of, dresser, bookcase, off to the side there, just so that we can talk about how to get enough light onto that. And really, that is our set. Now, if you're creating this image for your film, this could be filmed on a set or it could be filmed on location. If there is or isn't an actual window on this right side of the camera, that's where you're going to start using artificial light in particular. And that would be the same for either a studio environment or if you are at a location that just doesn't have a window, but you really like the room that you're in and you want to simulate that window light. So for something like this, you could use something like a Kino that is a soft source, but I think we need to go bigger than that just in terms of how much soft light there actually is in this shot. Okay, so let's get out a pretty large source here. Now this could easily be a 6x6, so I'm just going to increase the size right here and really just have that be kind of parallel to the wall itself as if it was a window, just right to his side though. Now at the same time, I think that we might want to wrap that light all the way around just a little bit. So we're going to put another one on this side. Now, both of these are going to need at least one lamp, depending on the strength of the lamps that you're using. If they are a little bit lower powered, like something like a GVM PDS, which I do really love, but they are a little bit lower power than some other options. If they are in the lower power category, you might need to have multiple of them to actually get enough light coming through. If you are using like a pretty powerful aperture lamp or something of the sort, you might be able to just get away with one. If you're using something like a tungsten Fresnel, you're probably going to be able to get away with just one. But then this should be our key. It's going to be lighting him from that right side of the frame, his left side. And then we're going to use this one right here to just kind of wrap it around his face just enough. I would say that if you want it to be a little bit more wrappy, you could cheat this to the side and just angle it ever so slightly. Even though it is trying to simulate that window, hey, it's a movie, we don't have to be exactly realistic. And something like that would make it just wrap a little bit more around his face, especially if he's moving. Now let's get some light paths. I keep in mind, in real life, it probably, unless you're in a simulation, won't clip outside of the wall, but that is just a limit of how this program works. So we're going to move that all the way to the back, and we're going to see how that light is coming across him. We're getting exposure on this desk, we're getting exposure on him, and we're getting exposure on the wall and that shelf unit that's behind him. I think that's probably actually built into the wall, but we're using the bookcase here. It shouldn't matter. Now, for this one, this is going to be a lot less of an intense light. We're not trying to actually key with this one, but we are just trying to make sure that that light wraps around appropriately. So we can see how this one would also come across. Now, this one is, like I said, much, much softer of light. We're not trying to key at all with this. We're barely trying to fill. We're just really mostly adding light to the space itself. So that way we have that light wrap around the face. Now this is the basic lighting setup here. We have this large, soft 6x6 source, and we have that, we can cheat that forward, we can get that close, we can get that where it needs to be to get this level of softness. But the goal is to not only key him with it, but have it light up the rest of the room. Now this one right here is filling in those shadows across the face, making sure that we get that detail right under the eye, making sure that we get the detail in the jacket still by just adding a little bit more light to the scene and not having anything clip black or clip white. At the same time, none of this is hard light at all. It's all very, very soft through those diffusion materials. I actually grabbed the wrong one when I pulled it originally. I grabbed the bounce one, but I meant diffusion. So there we go. So those are diffusion materials, and this would probably be a 6x6. This would probably be 4x4. You could probably do a 2x3, but something a little bit smaller just to help wrap that light around. But these are you could start out with a silk. You could do other types of diffusion material, whatever actually fits the level of diffusion that you need. But the main thing is that you need it to be big, and you need to be kind of relatively close to the subject. So, like I said, in terms of our camera angle itself, we are kind of compressing the space. So we're probably, at a normal to normal telephoto type lens. So that's probably, 50 to 70 millimeter-ish in terms of how the space compresses. We are not super close nor super far away. And we can also kind of tell that because there's not really any distortion on the face or the face to the hands. That kind of idea isn't present in this image. That kind of really does keep us at a normal range. Now, this is a painting, so it's being painted with the human eye. So that's really the common occurrence with paintings anyways. But our frame is relatively tight in terms of what we can see around, and these other objects are being cut off. This painting in the back is being cut off, the bookcase is being cut off, even the desk is being cut off. Really, the only thing that we're actually seeing almost the entirety of is the subject here, and these other aspects are the details that add to his story that has been framed by Degas. This is kind of the ideal setup. That's if you want to maximize your control and you have a little bit more of a budget. Now, let's talk about this in terms of it being a little bit lower of a budget. Maybe this is no longer an actual 6x6, but we can afford a 4x4, and we actually only do one lamp. Now, the thing is with the 4x4, because when you're creating the ratio of size of the source to your subject, that's how you get more diffused light, is it being larger than your subject. We need to get this one closer if it's going to be the 4x4. So we put that just a little bit closer, and we actually can take away one of the lamps if we're trying this more budget method. Now, at the same time, you might need to increase your ISO, increase the width of your aperture. Some of those kinds of changes will help you get a little more exposure if you're only using one lamp. I think that this setup right here, instead of having the diffusion 4x4 and the lamp, I think you could get away with an octabox pointed at the subject. It's not going to be as soft, and it might have a little bit more shaping to it. But really, if you can get away with these two lights not creating any vignette or shape on the wall, if it's just even all the way across, then I think that you can use these types of sources. That is something that is apparent in this image, is that the lighting is very, very even left to right in the frame of this painting. So as long as your octabox is not creating that vignette and you are getting it onto the subject, I think that can be used. Now, at the same time, octaboxes, like I said, have a little bit more direction to it, so you might have to adjust that a little bit. You also are still going to have to turn down that lamp so that it is very subtle in terms of how it's filling as it wraps around the face of the subject. Honestly, you might end up needing to have more light. So that could be a lantern that you use just to overall bump that exposure with an omnidirectional source. You could have that lantern. Now, when you start putting the lantern back in, the cost becomes a little more similar to if you have this kind of diffusion setup, but it will be a lot cheaper than having to either buy or rent a 6x6 to also have the lantern. So this one uses 3 lamps and this one uses 3 lamps, but the actual grip intensive nature of having the 6x6 and the 4x4 is going to be lessened in this one by using instead the octabox, replacing the 4x4 diffusion, and the 4x4 diffusion replacing the 6x6. I think you will get more control and better soft light with the top option, but down here, I think this can actually provide a similar look for a little bit less money that's more budget friendly. As always, these are decisions that you have to make based upon your project's needs and your budget and the images you are trying to create. But being flexible and creative with how we're using different tools and trying to get the look that we want is really the key here. Pun intended. A lamp with a 4x4 versus a lamp and an octabox can create similar looks. Even if they are slightly different, we can get to that similar place. And lastly, for both of these, if you need just a little bit more light under the eyelids and under the brim of the hat, you can take the bounce and put it just outside of frame. It would be just kind of down right at the edge over here, just outside of the frame. And you can bounce just a little bit more light back up into the face and onto the hand. This will have to be very subtle if you need it, because you don't want an incredibly strong reflection coming from right underneath. But that is something that you could do to add just a little bit more light back if it's not working. Now, bounces are cheap, so this is not adding too much more expense to our lower budget option down here. This could be beadboard. It could be a white poster board. It could be a 5-in-1 reflector. There's lots of different options here. I'm saying the same thing. Beadboard, 5-in-1 reflector. Bounces are usually quite cheap just to add a little bit more light reflecting around in your scene. So that about wraps up this lighting breakdown. If you are interested in getting this free template that I have for all the filmmaking tools, you can find it on my Patreon. I have a link down below. You can also subscribe on Patreon to support more of these lighting diagram videos, as well as my regular micro-budget cinematography content. You can subscribe to my channel for more micro-budget cinematography, as well as just general micro-budget filmmaking. I'm going to be making a lot more lighting diagrams, as well as a lot more lessons about how to use light, how to get soft light, how to get hard light, and how to tell stories with that. I'm really excited for some of the episodes I have coming up soon. If you're curious about any of the tools that I've talked about today, I have affiliate links down in the video's description if you want to pick any of them up for yourself. I love the Octabox, I love the Lantern, and I love those GVM P80S lamps. I think that they're quite affordable, and I have a 10% discount through GVM's website directly if you want to get them for yourself. They also have a buy one, get one offer right now, so you can save 10% and get a buy one, get one offer at the same time. I think it's a really swell deal. I've actually done that myself to expand my lighting kit. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the time you spend sitting here and learning lighting diagramming with me. And I hope that you have a wonderful day. Take care.